Greetings, everyone. Aloha. I had wanted to have you outside with me in the rainforest and just say, welcome to my rainforest garden, which is how I start my podcasts and videos. But it is, as it does in the rainforest, raining. So it was not really conducive for the electronics. Although I am working on doing a little shelter, but I don't have that today. So you have my very unexciting white wall behind me. But anyway, I just wanted to take pause. The beautiful information that Rowan shared and all of us gathered here in this unique setting, right, of Zoom. I'm still getting used to presenting on Zoom and just connecting to each and every one of us, sinking into our heart space. The sharing that I'm offering you today is really from my heart. It's really a heart journey. So there's no need for notes. Just let's connect in that deep space of respect for the story, honoring of each of our journeys, and bringing to you a little aloha and beautiful blessings from the rainforest here on the Big Island. Blessings from Pele, who has called me here. I feel so deeply within my heart, and she, who is a goddess of both love and destruction, creation, and possesses the heart of the lion, even if that's not what she appears, right, in molten lava. So I will share with you to start out that Yeshe had approached me, asked me to share on this topic. I really wanted to go segment and offer you something along those lines because I have been to Egypt and stood within her temple and had just profound experience. And she said, no, that's covered. There's enough today. So why don't you speak on this subject? And I took pause because, again, from that space of authenticity, it rather pushed some of my internal conditioning. I grew up in a household where courage was a boy thing. It was the boys who went off to war, or it was, I don't know, it was just associated in that realm. And my father made it very clear in not very kind language that it was not something I had. You know, I think I was a quiet child, as maybe many of us were. I like to read. I like to sit in my fairy garden and talk to fairies that were a little bit more interesting than people, I thought, at a young age. So I think we never quite connected to this day, I mind you. But anyway, those are our biggest teachers in life, aren't they? The ones that push our buttons. But it put me into that space of that little girl who is in this little box. And I said, well, this is really interesting because I haven't sat in that box for a long time. So I prayed on that and I said, Goddess, you are presenting me with this opportunity now to share in this beautiful temple space that has been so nourishing, so deeply heartfelt, right? And I'm hoping you find that as well, all of you who might be new to this temple. So what is it that you're asking of me? What can I share, right? Don't we often think that who am I to be in this space, to present on this big topic, maybe? And I prayed and I called upon Mother Mary, who's always with me, my candle on my altar. And she opened my heart and she's like, you beautiful priestess, how can you not talk on this topic? So I want to bring you to a moment in my time and bring us all together in this space, a moment that occurred more than 4 years ago now, which is hard for me to imagine. It just seems like yesterday in this time. And 4.5 years ago, I had a very different life. I was living in Sydney, not this beautiful space of Hawaii. Although Sydney beautiful on its own, of course, and such magic there. I spent 10 years in outside of Sydney. I was a wife, I was a mother to a child that was very young at that space. And on this particular day, my husband was going into town. We lived a bit far from Sydney, so he was going to go into town and have a pint and a catch up with some friends, spend the night in the city and come home the next day. That was the story that was presented, but that was not the story that occurred. Instead, what happened was he did not come home that day or the next day. There was moments of, I'm sure with all of you who have a life partner, of connection. He and I were very connected, constantly chatting, constantly sending messages. Even if we were angry, we would get online and go, oh, no big deal. Let's just move on. And there was hours that night that there was nothing from him. But our mind doesn't want to go to the nth degree, does it? We kind of protect ourselves and think, all right, well, this happened or that happened, and it can't be any big deal. Until the next morning when my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. And I instantly knew. And don't we as magical women, as priestesses and witches and all of us who are in this magical realm of goddess, we know because we have that intuition within us. Even if we sometimes push it away, it is there within us and we have this knowing. And so when that doorbell rang at 7 a.m., I thought this isn't right. And when I opened the door and saw two armed policemen who were just impossibly young, that just stands out in my mind, that these two police officers who looked to me like children at the time, maybe early 20s, obviously not there to present good news, right? We think about any story, any movie, any plot. Nothing ends well when you have, two police officers at your door. And they immediately started talking. And I was very conscious of the fact that my young daughter was behind me watching. And so the mommy lion roared up and I said, stop. Let's go over here where it's quiet, just so I can get this scene that was unfolding before me, that I knew I had no control to stop at that moment, but I could control what my child would witness. So I got them away, I got them outside, and I share this with you, sisters and brothers that are present. There wasn't a lot of talk. It was really presented to me very in your face, let's say. And they said these three words, which will never, ever leave my mind. They said, your husband, Mr. Boyce, he's deceased. And I just paused because that's a big thing for anyone that's holding space now for this story, and certainly for me in that moment. And I remember thinking, well, it's just that. I remember thinking, my mind going off, because when you're presented with something like this, that is such a huge thing, your mind doesn't want to go there. But your body, your energy body, and we all know about energy, and many of us practitioners of energy work, the body registers and starts going into shock. So I could feel my body start shaking. I could feel my stomach just in all sorts of directions, my hands shaking, my mind just going, what is going on? And not being able to grasp at that moment the enormity of what was presented to me. And in the back of my mind, this little voice that screamed, where's Pete, my husband? Where is he? He's not here. And those of you who have life partners, you know that in any moment of stress or just seeking that comfort, that's who you go to, isn't it? There's a reason that you have a life partner. It makes a balance in life. Where's Pete? I remember thinking, and he wasn't there. I looked at my phone, just hoping, no text, nothing. So as the moments went on, realization was sinking in. Could this be possible? Could it? Maybe he's just out shopping. Maybe they have the wrong person, in stories, maybe it's the wrong person. They had the wrong wallet. My mind was going in a million directions. And I bring this aspect of the story to you because I know Goddess had me experience this, because from my work as a trauma counselor, as a grief counselor, I know firsthand what is trauma for the body and for the mind and for the heart. And now I'm blessed to work with people in that space of compassion. So there's a reason, isn't there, for everything that we experience in life. But in that moment, I was not thinking there's a reason or thinking of blessings. I was thinking, where the heck is my husband and what happened? because to add to this story is there was no simple explanation. In fact, there was really no explanation. And that in and of itself, sisters, is a whole nother story. Because I know now, and I've discussed this with Yeshe and with other magical women, that his life was not, it was not an accident. He was taken. So, and I'll pause there because that's another big thing to add to this layer. But in that space of confusion, let's say, I really felt myself split. The body, the mind, the spirit, the knowing of the priestess, all working not together in that moment. But I remember thinking, I can't let myself go down too far because I have a child who is 9, who knew nothing. And even though I was shattering, I knew I had skills. I knew I did. And I knew no matter what was being presented in this moment, somehow I would get through. I didn't know at that moment, but I knew somehow. But my child was looking to me. And in the back of my mind, thinking, well, if what they're saying is correct, then there's no daddy anymore to help her. So it's all on me. I remember thinking that clearly, because that was a poignant element of this journey, was that it was on me. And that is part of cultivating courage, is that deep dive within. We can't find courage. I think I put in my quote about the cowardly lion from Wizard of Oz, right? We can't find courage out there, really. There's no one can hand it to us. Courage is that deep dive within. It's something that we go within us to a space that we didn't even think we had, right? And we find the essence of ourselves that says, I will get past this. And of course, all of us in Goddess Circle, reaching out to Goddess in whatever face she presents to us and saying, okay, I need some help. I need some help. And our magical sisters coming to our aid, which they did in that moment for me. I know time is zipping away. So in that moment, listening to these police babble on about something, I can't even tell you what they had said in that moment. But at one point I started getting angry. Now I am an Aries, so there's a little bit of fire there, as Yeshe knows well. But I started getting angry because I said, this isn't right how they're sharing this story with me. It's just not right. And so I actually stopped the police officers in their telling. And I said, you know what? I've had enough. You need to get out of my house now. So I kicked him out. I said, go. You can find your way out. You found your way in. Get out of my house. Get out of my space. I need to sit with this without your energy here. I need to sit and I need to reflect on what is happening to me so that I can make that deep dive and go within. And what I realized in this journey, and what, again, I bring through my medicine, through my work with people, is that we have to listen to ourselves. There's a lot of people that come out of the woodwork and say, you should do this and you should do that and you should take this and you should have this. And I knew in that moment, and I really wanted to share this essence, is that we need to listen to ourselves, to listen and honor our bodies and what they're saying. Because the body, when it goes through shock, is not a fun thing. And it's not easy on the body. My hair did not used to be this white 3 years ago. Now I know I've aged a little bit, but I'm going to tell you, shock, trauma, hardness on the body. So I knew I needed to listen to myself, to find stillness where I could find it, to balance being a mother now to a grieving child while I'm grieving, which was the shard of the dream of what I'm creating now, to create a sacred space here on the island to help women who are in grief, who have had trauma. Because to mother a child when you yourself are shattered is beyond challenging. And we as a society, and all of us here, would know we need to do better. We need to do better with grief. We need to do better with mothers and children in trauma. But that's what I'm creating now. So it's that deep dive within to say, I need to rest. Now, I've shared this with some of my patients now who say, oh, you need to sleep, you need to sleep. And I say, why? You're not going to sleep when you don't know, when you're missing that someone. You're not going to. So instead of forcing it, or instead of taking something that will force sleep, why don't you be in that, excuse me, in that space of not sleeping? Stillness, meditation, all the tools that we have as priestesses and we use, these come into play big time when you're going through that life crisis, big time. I just skip to my patients. All of this experience that I've had has shaped my work with my clients. And I am, as Yeshe had shared, a spiritual counselor for hospice, in-home hospice. If anyone here is not from the States, it is unique to the States. In Australia, there's no such thing. In other parts of the world, there's no such thing as in-home care. But I go into people's homes and I start my work with them saying, I'm honored to be in your space because I know it's your space. And I treat that with respect and honor. But I realized, writing a blog post on my website, that I go into people's homes really at the worst moment in their life, right? I deal with people who have been diagnosed with terminal something. And I share with them that, all of us are dying, and you've been given this expiration date, is what I say to them. And it might be true, it might not be true. It's all within your heart. And I have seen miracles, sister, of people sent home from hospitals, really just shell-shocked. Stories I could share with you, people that go in with a stomach ache and all of a sudden they have stage 4 something and they're sent home to die, dealing with this shock and trauma. And I'm sent in. Always I feel sent by the divine, by Goddess, to support these families. And I know it's not a good day for them. There's things shattering all around. So that ability to hold space for my clients comes from this journey of my own. I couldn't do it without this experience. And for that, I am grateful. Not in that moment. That was a trying moment. But yes. I see suffering every day, through my patients. And anyway, we could go on and on about what is the essence of suffering and what is suffering in the world. And that goes down a whole another line, right? Another story. But in this moment, in the months after losing my husband, who was my best friend, he was my support in this world, the one that had my back. I used to have a radio show, a live radio show, 2 weeks, 2 hours every week, which takes a little bit of courage on its own to get out there and talk. And every time he was texting me saying, great show, Mea, great lines, great something that you offered. He was my support. So to not have that suddenly was devastating, truly. There was many a dark night and nights that I dreamt of just swimming out into the ocean and stopping it all because it was so overwhelming and so painful. And there came a point, and the number 4 sticks in my head, and I don't know if that's what happened or not, but after about 4 months, that's what's coming to me. A moment came where I said, you are going down this road, Mea, that is, you get into that point of no return. You need to do something now. You've allowed yourself to cry. You've granted yourself space. You've done the grieving things. The shock was wearing off. And I remember this moment, sisters, and this I want to share with you, because this is truly the moment I feel that courage, that heart of the lion that we're talking about, began speaking to me. And I remember saying to myself, you are in a pickle. You are in this space, Mea, that really one more step down this path that you're on, and you won't be able to get back. You won't be the mother that you want to be for your child. You won't be the role model that I've always dreamed to be in the world in some way, even if it's a small way, just something to put out there, to share my light. Your light is becoming dim. And understandably, with kindness and compassion, but it's becoming dim, and I couldn't allow that to happen. So I made a choice, and I said, I can choose to share the story with the world that my husband died, I'm miserable, I'm diminished, I'm a martyr, I'm self-pity, all of that road. I can share with that story and say it's the worst day of my life, the most horrible event that ever has happened to anyone, and I can hold on to that, and that will be my story for the rest of my life. And I share with you with some of my hospice people, many of them actually, that is the moment that they hold on to that story. And so I really want to stress this, that holding on to a story that doesn't serve us, but appears to be defined around us, that holding on to that story does harm to the body. And I would think all of you would know that there is that connection between Mani, mind, and spirit. I said, I can do that. And I know the road that will happen. I can hold on to that story the rest of my life, or I can take that story and I can turn it on its head and I can say, and it's, I remember the anguish, the decision, the choice, the feeling in that moment to say this. I can say that it is the moment that my life became a blessing of infinite possibilities. And it was hard to say then. It's become easier because I held on to that and I said infinite possibilities. And immediately there was expansion, because when we expand our aura, our self, we reside in that space of expansion. Fear is contraction, is it not? And when we hold on to stories that do not serve us any longer, that fear takes over and diminishes our light. So that reaching into ourselves for pure courage, pure trust in the divine, in the work that we do as priestesses, reaching in and saying, I'm going to find that blessing in here because I am priestess and I trust in that calling. And there's a reason. There's always a reason, even if it feels really stinky at the time. There's always a reason. So I held on to that. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what I was going to do. My husband was the breadwinner in our family. I was doing magical work, as many of us, but certainly not supporting my family. So there was panic about where were funds going to come through, and all of these other elements that women deal with in grief. That now I support women, and I've created a program here called Kindness Angels, of other women who have loved and lost coming together to support those in trauma. So Kindness Angels is the name of my program. I lost my train of thought. I went on to that. It's reaching just within, sisters, is it not? And redefining our stories. And that is a magic that we can do in this world. We don't have to hold on to the stories that our fathers or mothers or anybody showered to us any longer. You know, Shakespeare said that this whole world is a stage. I believe as a writer that the whole world is a story, and we create our stories. Don't think you can't add some embellishment and some sparkles into that story. You can add whatever you want that makes you feel good and proud of yourself, makes you feel lighter. You know, in the workshops, the energy workshops I teach, I say, I keep things simple. There's only two feelings in the world: excitement, which is up here with love, and then there's contraction down here with fear. And if things sink us down to this space of fear and contraction, let it go. Really sit with that. We don't need to be in a space of fear and contraction any longer. And that's why I believe in part Yeshe has put on this beautiful conference, so that we can come together and feel that space of expansion. Magic happens in that space. And we allow goddess into our hearts, our sisterhood into our hearts, when we allow that surrender into trust, into expansion. So I didn't know what was going to happen at all. And it took 9 months to extract my life in Australia because I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Leaving there and finding my way to Hawaii. And that's another story in and of itself. But truly just following my heart space, even though my parents thought I was nuts. Even the high priestess of the temple I was a part of in Australia, I think, suspected I was a little bit off, because she said, do you have anyone there in Hawaii? Do you have a community? Do you have friends? Do you have a connection? Do you have a home? Do you have a job? I said, I have none of those things. But what I have is a feeling. And I know it's where I'm supposed to go. And that, sisters, has to be enough. It has to be enough that we trust ourselves and our divinely offered intuition, our divinely offered wisdom. It has to be enough. So many women that I counsel take that wisdom and then they go, oh, but I don't know. Oh, but, and we get in our heads, don't we? And they talk themselves out of it. So if I could offer you a gift, I'd say trust yourselves. Because the world is a magical place when we do. Goddess knows what our path is. And we do too when we get into that space, our heart space. So for me, this journey of cultivating courage, of surviving trauma, shock, the loss of my partner, who now I work with on the other side. We're still very connected. And those of you who work with those across the veil know that there is no death. Is there? There isn't. It is just a shedding of our physical body. The spirit continues. Sometimes he's too close and I have to tell him, I need to do work. You need to back off a little bit. But I see him, hear him, he like blows air in my ear sometimes. I know he's present. And the hardest thing as a hospice counselor is working with families who have no beliefs. And I can't force people to believe that fact. We have to know it from within. And I believe in this space that we all have that recognition that death is just a doorway. It truly is. It's just a doorway. It took a while to be able to work with him, though, again, because the grief was so raw. The hurting is so raw. And if I had to define suffering in this world, of which there's many faces, the missing of someone, it's pretty much up there. Because that longing, that sense of physicality, that support is just gone. And any of us who have lost someone, we know. And my heart is with you, sisters, in that space of grief, if you are there, because I know how not easy it is. And so all the more reason for us in sisterhood to come together to support each other. Men have a very different sense of grief. And as a woman's counselor and a woman who now has been in this work professionally for, I was thinking, close to 17 years, only working with women, I can only speak from authority from that perspective. But it is the coming together to share. Grief, I share with my clients, is a two-pathed journey. One is the inner journey that has to be made, and the other is connecting with like-minded individuals who have gone through that journey together. You have to find your tribe. And our society is not bad with that. There's lots to offer to connect, right, in that space of grief. But we're not good with the inner journey. We are in this space, but the rest of the world, the inner journey, going within, I think you would agree. We need some work to do about that inner dive. And the space of courage, comes from that inner dive. It's pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, not knowing what's going to happen the next day, but saying, somehow I will get through this because I have faith, I trust, and I know, and I have will. I will get through it. And listening to my intuition and my heart space. That's such a challenge out there in the world, is it? Still getting people out of their head and into their heart space. And even for us, sometimes we overthink ourselves, don't we? But it's this space and this new era that we're creating. That's where it's at. And that is where courage is found. And in my journey in particular, I have parents, but they're not the kind of parents that were nourishing in this trauma. So there was no white knight. I was always in the beginning praying for that white knight, someone to rescue me, someone to help me, someone to just dump money on, and I wouldn't have to worry about that, or take my child for a while so I can sit in that space of grief. Anything. But that wasn't my journey. My journey was sitting in that heart space of the lion and looking fear in the face and saying, not today. Not today. I'm still here. That day and the day after and the day after, until 4 years from that space, I am in Hawaii in a beautiful home that has manifested with a child who is now 13 going on 14 and now has graciously, thank you, Goddess, gone off for the weekend with friends, allowing me this space to speak openly without worrying that she's hearing. Working with the dying, the bereaved, and helping to create a sisterhood here on the island and around the world of sisters who connect in that space of courage. Any of us who walk this path of a priestess know courage because we are off the beaten path, aren't we? I pray in time the tide will turn as we come together, and we will be the ones out there. And I hope this is not disrespectful, but calling the non-magical people that are in the world, the muggles we call them. I don't know if that's that's not disrespectful. Non-magical people, that they'll look to us to see what is our sparkle. What is it that we have that we walk through this earth with grace, with pride, with courage? What do we have? And they might wonder and come over to our side, right? But to walk this path, listening to your heart space, is pure courage. I think I heard Rowan say that, okay, he wings the prayers. I heard that because in a way, don't we all? We don't need to be handed something. We speak from our heart space and speak to Goddess in that connection. It's a simple journey and a complex journey, isn't it? Walking our own heart song. But each of us, that's where I was going, each of us has that courage within us. And you don't have to have a story like mine of this big thing. It can be a little thing and feel big to you. We have to stop comparing our stories. So much strife in that comparing and looking, oh, well, this, that. Young children that I cancel, the mothers of young children who look at their bodies and already at the ages of 7 and 8, and this breaks my heart, saying they hate this and they hate that. Our stories are our own. And our stories, because they are our own, we can rewrite them any way we want. It's not an obligation to tell a story to someone of something that happened to you when you were 13. You can recraft that story any way you want. That is the beauty of life. In a way that makes you feel strong and proud and graceful. and a way that makes you feel in line with your vows to Goddess and your commitment to your sisters and your community. My phone just beeped and I go, I'm feeling like that's an inner, like, okay. So just to share with you, sisters, before I end, and I'm feeling that's complete without even looking at my phone. I have started a project. It started with the blessing of Yeshe in one form, now has expanded. And I realized as I was presenting today that that vow I took to myself to be in a space of expansion has continued, because when we make a vow to Goddess in whatever form, she hears you. And it might not blow up the next day, but those steps, they are going until one day, 4 years, even 10 years, maybe you look back and you go, wow, that all started at that moment. So the project I started with Gentle Feather has expanded now into a project I called She Rises. I have a podcast. What I'm striving to create here is both a physical space here on the island dedicated to the Divine Mother, a space that's open to all to come to honor her and to honor our journey of the Divine Feminine, as well as a mystery school, because I'm a teacher at heart and would love to teach this and inspire people through my story and the stories of all that I touch. And I will be doing an online, if you go to Eventbrite, and I'll put it in the chat, a series of talks called Voices of the Dying, the wisdoms of people that were shared to me on deathbeds about life that I find inspiring. I would love to share with the world. So just one short 1 hour talks, and with Yeshe's blessing, we'll add some of that magic in the chat. But I just want to thank each and every one of you for holding space. This is not an easy story to dive into, and it takes courage each time to open up that wound and to share it from that space of authenticity. So I'm very honored and blessed to be a part of this temple with Yeshe and all of you. So thank you. Thank you.